Okay, hi, I'm Shauna O'Briain, also known as MC Angel from when I used to do some hip hop stuff. So I write poems, raps, MC events, promote, host, also do a lot of youth work in the violence against young women and girls sector. Generally just writing about life and using events and music and poetry and arts as a way to kind of create protests, really, but protests that bring people together in joy, in unity, expanding consciousness, expanding ways of being, and just enjoying the many different ways that, as someone who loves words, can play with them in so many different formats and express them in so many different ways. There's so many ways to express these art forms. So I've never felt connected to just one. That's why it's so many, that's why it's so multifaceted.
Oh, it's so very wonderful to meet you. Hi, everyone. My name is Rafeif Ismail. I am broadcasting from Burulu on Wajak Noongar Boja. I'd like to pay my respects to elders past, present, and future, and any First Nations people who this recording may reach. So I am a writer. I say writer very loosely. I do a lot of stuff. I write about stuff. My favorite form is Afro-Black speculative fiction. That's where the majority of my art originates from. I enjoy exploring the themes of home, belonging, and the so-called Australian identity through the lens of 21st century refugees and third culture youth of the Sudanese diaspora, aka me. And yeah, so I've written a couple of a couple of short stories. I've recently finished editing Unlimited Futures with the incredible Ellen Van Neven. So that's coming out from Fremantle and Jet Press. And I have just started writing for television with the 2020 AFTRS National Talent Camp and the 2021 Equity Foundation Screen Diversity Showcase. And yeah, I'm the kind of person who can quote Doctor Who episodes from memory and has seen Black Panther 28 times in cinema. So yeah, glad to be here.
So awesome to meet you. Okay, I am going to read your letter. So if anyone doesn't have the memo, we wrote letters from our past selves to our future selves. And I'm going to read Rafeif's letter. And I'm coming from London, by the way, if you couldn't tell where this accent's from. To you in the years before, 1997. The security officers laughing outside your grandparents' house fill you with a cold rage. You're nearly 4 and wondering if you can somehow take their car and drive until you find your parents safe. It will not be the first time that you feel that afraid, but it is the only time that you will ever pick up something with the intention of using it as a weapon. You survive. 2021. You learn how to run. Cairo will constantly chase you for years to come, but you get away physically. 2009. You try to make a bargain with the universe, willing to give anything for your mother to come back safe. You begin to give up explaining your multiple worlds. 2014. You stand at the edge of a platform at Findler Street Station. It's your first time out of Perth. You plan for an end, but you see a child across the platform. You think of your earliest memories and you can't bring yourself to be the nightmare of another person. 2015. You stand on the edge of an empty train platform, a year to the day. Before you find your resolve, your mother calls. 2018. How can you think of an ending when your people are screaming, bleeding, breaking for their freedom? Protests, vigils, nightmares. The litany of names of the dead is a reminder the struggle is never over. 2019. Massacres, revolution, maybe freedom. You begin to imagine going home again. 2020, you make tally of how many days you can go without someone you know dying. The longest is 5 weeks. 2021, your suicide note reads, Dear future self. You make a list of grief counselors for your family and friends on Excel. You drag yourself to see a psychologist and learn how to start living again until 2021. There will come a time when you look at this fragmented timeline and wish that you could hold the younger you close. Every one of your breaths is an act of resistance. You're finding joy in the small moments of life. You're playing music again. You write terrible songs, they're great. Here is a list of lessons learnt in these last few days. Between your beliefs and being liked, stand by what you believe in. Between you and being liked, pick you. Dreams may not come true, but at least you're alive to dream them. A good story can ward off all manner of things. You can reread a book 100 times and never be bored. You are not an atlas to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders. You are not Atlantis to sink beneath it all. You write a show. It's very black, very queer, and unapologetically you. You write really terrible music, it's great. Revolutions never end, but hope and work also endure. Breathe, start again. You're still here despite it all. See you in another 10 years. Love you, older but not yet wise.
Amazing. Thank you for reading that. I would love to read your letter now. Dear Shauna, aka 15-year-old me, I get that it's dark now, right now, that you're locked in a chest underneath the sea without a key. The world doesn't make sense. Look out the window with cockneys screaming into a void. Onto the blocks, small rabbit hutches scratched on a Camden estate. That ginger woman shouts. You're Irish in her thick Dublin accent. I get that you don't know who you are here. Eldest of 4 siblings, the gay one, and no one knows. Expression is dangerous in ends. But Shauna, your mum did try by raising us here. And I get it. The beatings, the abuse, the addictions, karma we inherited from the roots of a rotten family tree followed us to England. Chained up in poverty, can't even feed the ducks. So far under the breadline, chest heavy under the weight of what is the point of this life, these tiny bombs. You don't take enough of them pills in front of you for them to detonate. Suicide isn't your fate. You have life to live, young woman. All you're trying to escape is no longer here. The drink took Mom eventually. Yet, her power still lives through you, Shauna. Her creative spirit planted seeds for healing. You are on a journey. You are a warrior of light, a child of the universe. You face your demons with the sharp sword of your words, and it always hurts. You learn to create joy in the pain, releasing tears into rivers that cleanse trauma. 7 generations forward and back, you're who your ancestors prayed for. Feel this. Turning your poison into medicine with poetry, creating meaning in darkness, carved into stories. You're an artist. I promise you, it will all make sense one day. Your anger is a force. You advocate for change. You challenge the system. You stand up for community. That tiny light you see, you turn it into a blaze that sets many hearts alight with a passion for life just by being you. You're a beautiful woman now, a rainbow goddess. You're celebrated for all that you are. Your road, it was not an easy road, but you're on this path. You have purpose. Your life is connected to all life. And as you change, the world changes. Never give up. And I know you can hear this. That's why you didn't find another box of pills to detonate you off this planet. And I'm so glad you didn't, because you are so precious. Love, Shauna, aka 40-year-old me.
Thank you.
What a letter.
That was so emotional. That was so emotional.
It's an emotional piece. It's a beautiful and emotional piece. Yeah.
Both ways round, that was really emotional.
Could you tell me more about this letter you wrote to your 15-year-old self? What inspired it?
So it was such a deep process because literally, like when I lived at my mom's house, it was just such a horrible place to live. So I grew up on this estate in Camden. My parents came from Ireland and my mom was really young. And she brought us up away from all our family, from everybody. And my mom's family are like, they're quite a bit more well off than we were. And she just brought us up in poverty in England. So I just remember being in that house and, you know, you look out the window, you just see more and more blocks. There's no trees, and it just felt like there was no escape. So suicide was always something that was very clear on my mind because I didn't know how I would ever be able to move myself out of that environment. So when I wrote that letter, I felt like I transported back in time. And it was like I always had this voice that like spoke to me when I was there that was like, Shauna, you're going to be able to do some things when you're older. Like you've got some gifts. I know that there's no way you can nurture them right now in this environment, but give them a chance to be seen. And it was like, I felt like I have transformed enough in my life at this point in my life to have been able to write that to myself. So it felt like the messenger went through space and time and I met myself on the own timeline and I was able to receive it, which is part of what created my future now. I hope that makes sense. And I was sobbing when I wrote it and I didn't expect to have such a strong emotional response while writing it. But it was just a really deep process. What about you? Do you want to tell me some more about your letter?
First, thank you for sharing. That is so beautiful. And also because you've created this journey of like, just, yeah, like the hope and resilience that you bring through is just so, yeah, just so very wonderful. So when I wrote this letter, I had been trying to think of something hopeful to write, but as I was like doing the final draft of what was supposed to be my positive letter to my future self, my country underwent a military coup again. And I kind of I felt like I was in stasis because we've had some sort of, not democracy, not even a facsimile of democracy, but the dream towards it for the last 2 years. And I'd been waiting for the other shoe to drop. And then that shoe dropped. And I just had to reflect. Like I went back to the daily grind, the things that have never stopped, what would be called activism in the West and what would be called living where I'm from. And so I wanted to reflect on these really seminal moments that just, I think, made me who I am. And I remember that, like, there just, by the end of the letter, I was like, there are things that I want to do to nurture my past self, to nurture my future self. And like you, I felt like as if I was transported back in time and in space to the younger me. But I also felt like I was transported to a future me. I could write hopefully about a future and also just reflect on some positives, like the terrible music that I'm writing, and how great that is. So that's kind of me. Like, the struggle is not over. My country is still fighting for its rights. My people are leading and screaming and shouting for freedom. And we'll do that until the very end. And like, it's not an ending for me. Like, there is no, like, yeah, revolutions endure, and so did the people. And that's what I kind of tried to capture with my letter.
I really hear that. And what I really resonated with what you wrote was about like you making a tally of days you can go without someone dying. Like that just felt like a whole story in a couple of lines. And I'm hearing what you're saying about fighting for freedom, because in poverty in London, in like the council estates, you know, there's an epidemic of young people that kill each other every day. And I've had so many of my friends to like suicide, drugs, murder, psychiatric hospitals, you know, and then people are like, oh, well, how do you do what you do? Like, I'm like, well, you know, a couple of my siblings haven't made it. My mom didn't make it. My dad ain't made it. It's like, people don't make it. So even though it seems like, yeah, London's a third world, like, no, London's a first world country, but within that, there are people still fighting for freedom. So every day when I'm advocating for young women in the system, when I'm going to meetings with social services, police, foster carers, centers, it's like I'm just like screaming into a void, because people don't want to hear the voice of any sort of oppression. And I really felt that in your piece that kind of transcended to mine, which is like growing up in places where the system literally just kicks people down makes it very hard to want to live or exist in this world. And to come from two such different places and to present in such different ways, but have threads and themes that are the same. And also the way we had like little chunks of time and then like a little positive ending, because I heard what you said there as well. Like, it's so important to keep injecting that hope. And I feel like that's the real work, is that consistent injection of hope while still daily being faced with the reality of the past self. It's like it never leaves. But then it's like the shedding of the new self brings in this new wealth that is like trying to imagine and redefine a new world. And then it's like using the gifts of being a writer to be able to do that also. So it just feels so important to meet you. And I just feel so blessed to have this conversation and to be starting my week on a Monday morning doing this, because it's so inspiring. And when I read your bio, I was like, wow, this woman just sounds so amazing. I feel so honored to meet you. And then reading your poem, I was like, yeah, like your letter is just so deep. And it's just so many lines. Like the first time you felt like using something as a weapon, I was like, that's just a whole story. Like that could be a few lines. That's just a whole story, you know? So powerful. Like, thank you for being you and just bringing yourself to this planet.
Thank you for being you and for enduring on this planet. Your work is so very beautiful. Like every line just resonated. The way you captured like the intersections of like class and migration and living in such like a separate place from where you wanted to grow up. It was just, yeah, like obviously we've never met before, and to see like a similar reflection was from like the other side of the world was kind of really cool. And I loved how you've just created this journey. You took us on a journey with your letter. It was a poem, and it was a story, and it was just so unapologetically you celebrating yourself and being here. And that was utterly wonderful and a gift to read. So thank you. It's been such a pleasure. to be part of this with you.
Art is so important in terms of shifting and creating the world that we want to change. And I really saw that in your piece, the stories of back home, emerging in a new space, finding space in a new place while still belonging to somewhere else and trying to carry and create change for where you've come from too. Such a multi-dimensional existence encapsulated in a few words in a letter.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, like art can never be separated from activism, from change, from the worlds that we dream and envision and work to create, because how else can we work to create them if we don't write them, if we don't imagine them? One of my favorite writers once said that once the imagination is unshackled, liberation is limitless. And I so truly believe that. I probably butchered that quote, but yeah, that is something that I've just, always tried to carry. And I see in your work that you're doing the same thing. And it's really wonderful to see like these tiny dots of light across the world. Like we might feel small, but we're all connected. Yeah.
And I'm so glad neither of us were successful in any suicide attempts. But
Yes.
it also, I think the connection of both of us talking about suicide as a way out, and then art and expression and writing actually became the way out. But I think it also lends to how fragile this life is. And it's just one thought, like if your mom didn't call you before the platform, or if you didn't see that child, we might not have been having this conversation. If I had known how much you need to take to commit suicide, because there was no internet back then, I might have had I might not be here now. So I'm so grateful that we are both here now, because it could have been a really different story. And yeah, life is so fragile and people are so precious, and really taking care of people, I think, is so important. I think that's what comes through, I feel, from the similarity of both our letters together, is that caring for people and offering space for people to be able to process their lives is some of the most radical work we can do here, because it's the difference between jumping on a track or taking another box of pills or not, and then writing that impacts the world and doing like activist work that impacts the world.
Yep, absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. Oh, I don't know what to follow that up with. I think that's kind of the best way to end this conversation. Like, you have hit the nail on the head. I hope that that's the right expression in English. But yeah.
It totally is the right expression for English. Yeah.
Brilliant.
So nice to meet you. Thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much, Shauna.